Love bombing, the Romeo effect, the drizzle. What do these words mean? Where do they come from? Warning, they probably are not what you think. We are so lucky today to have Dr. Bethany Marshall joining us to discuss the landscape facing girls and women today. It seems all has spiraled out of control, but not on Dr. Bethany's watch. Dr. Bethany Marshall is a well known marriage and family therapist and psychoanalyst and appears as a commentator on national television and radio shows and can be seen frequently on Crime Stories with Nancy Grace. And we're so lucky to have her back on The Warriors. You can follow all of her social media, which is excellent, excellent videos, by the way, everybody. You can go to drbethanymarshall.com, also on X, also Instagram, all over the place. She's also an author. We have to bring that up because it ties into what we're talking about today of deal breakers, when to work on a relationship and when to walk. So I'm just going to bring her to the floor, everybody. Welcome back, Dr. Bethany Marshall, to the Warriors.
Hi, Lynn. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. You really are one of my favorite warriors because I just love, I feel like your energy is infectious with me. So it makes me a better warrior. So I wanted to share that with you. But I wanted to start with, and I want to add, because you're very calm when you talk, I get very worked up. So you calm me down also, because there's so much happening, especially with girls and women, boys and men too. But I'm very disturbed, 2025, and things seem to be escalating out of control, the landscape, sexual exploitation. And also, it seems to be much more normalized, and people are becoming numb and habituated to all of this. So I wanted to start with explain what love bombing is, because I'm starting to hear it all over the place. And I know our warriors out there don't really understand what this is, or if they're even part of it, because it happens so fast. You don't even know what's going on.
Well, love bombing is when you go on a date with somebody or somebody meets you or they ask you out or they make a romantic overture towards you. And instead of connecting with you and then letting some time pass and then connecting with you again, in other words, instead of letting things unfold organically or at a natural pace, they want to merge with you. They want to be one with you. And this is a psychoanalytic term. We talk about merger fantasies. And if you look at the DSM, the Diagnostic and I always have a hard time with this one, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, you will see that with personality disorders, there's almost always a wish to merge, and they talk about clinging and rejecting behaviors. So I think of love bombing as the clinging, the merger, the wanting to be one with the other person, kind of like a stalker wants to be one. Now, it's kind of an exaggeration or an amplification of the normal wish to have proximity seeking behavior with our loved ones, right? Because most of us kind of fall prey to this fantasy that, if we don't talk to our partner for a few days, or they go on a business trip, or they're away from us, well, they still remember us, love us, and hold on to us psychologically. But we're able to reassure ourselves that we're still important. We're not, just because we're out of sight does not mean we're out of mind. People who are love bombers, they believe that love fades in 15 minutes. If they're out of sight, they're out of mind. So they always have to inject themselves into the psyche of the other person. So it can be harassing unwanted phone calls. It could be sending pictures. A patient of mine came to therapy once. He just started dating somebody. And while he was in the therapy session, this new girlfriend started texting him all these racy photos of herself. And it occurred to me that she was love bombing him because she felt threatened that he was in therapy and afraid that he might be talking about her or even planning to separate from her. So she just bombed the heck out of him with all those photos.
Wow, this reminds me, I was speaking to somebody this morning, and to give you a little context, she was 18, single mom, struggling,
Mm,
and met an older man, 10 years older, who just all of a sudden was gifting her things and
mm,
constantly there and loving her, and said he's going to make her his queen.
mhm.
And would you call that love bombing? Because that went on for 4 months, like nonstop. And she was 18. I mean, she was a child,
Wow.
basically, with a child. But then what happened is, because she was
Mm,
so vulnerable, he
mm,
then led her into trafficking, sex
Oh my,
trafficking.
oh.
So that's why, I really also want to speak to you today. I'm hearing so many stories like that where these
Mhm.
vulnerable girls, I mean, 17, 18 is a girl, and then also young women, and
Mm.
also all women, everybody wants love and acceptance, right?
Of course.
But I'm hearing about this, Bethany, like so much lately. They get sucked in. Is that love bombing? But now they're turned after a few months and it turns into sex trafficking. It's like seems to be like the new thing going on.
Well, it's a part of an offending pattern, the way you're talking about it. Just like a child molester will say, "Here, I have a cute puppy," or "Come with me, I'll give you candy," or grooms the child by making the child feel so important.
Hmm.
And then they abuse and use the child. The type of love bombing you're talking about is kind of propping the girl up, making her feel important, giving her all these gifts. But
Hmm.
then what happens is this poor little 18-year-old probably became attached to the
Yes.
perpetrator, lost sight, and then he had power over her.
That's what she was explaining also. We also, it kind of coincides with the Romeo effect. Now, have
Mm,
you been talking about that at all? It's sort of
absolutely.
it's sort of similar to love bombing, but we're hearing this in middle schools now, sixth, seventh, eighth grade, a
Mm,
victim of the Romeo effect. What can you
mm.
tell us about that?
Well, my understanding of the Romeo effect is that if two partners or children are falling in love and somebody tries to interfere, like a parent or a teacher, they see that there's something going on that's not so healthy, it kind of attaches the two children together even more, or the so-called romantic partners. Is that what you're hearing?
Yes, I'm hearing that plus.
What are you hearing?
It
Tell me
seems like,
what
well,
you're hearing.
I'll tell you, it seems like, and we're going to get into it a little bit. Words are now having different definitions all of a sudden. I'm noticing in the last year, words we have known are now becoming something else. But I want to hold that thought for a minute. Romeo is basically they become boyfriend and girlfriend. It's
Yes.
kind of like the love bombing. They're treated really well. The boy will buy them gifts. They
Mm,
just love, love, love. And then, and what we're finding out in middle and high schools, it doesn't even go a couple of months. It can be a month later. The girl becomes so
mm,
saturated and she thinks she's in love. She'll do anything
mm,
for this boy or for this kid that he will then say, "Do me a little favor. I need a little extra money. My friend really likes
mm,
you. If you love me, you'll do this for me." And they all tell me
mm,
the same thing. We know
mm,
it's wrong. We didn't want to do it, but he just, wore us down. So it's kind of the same
mm.
like love bombing for the younger set or something like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, as I'm listening to you, what I'm hearing is an intensification or an outlier of normal human angst. Okay, so for instance, in my field, we look at outliers to understand normal psychopathology. So let's say murder suicide is often happens when the woman is about to become more autonomous and independent. It destabilizes the husband, who's often personality disordered, and so then he kills the wife to have power over her. And so when I'm sitting in session, I don't know if this is a little tangential, but when I'm sitting in session just with a normal couple who's fighting, and the wife said, "Oh, I want to go out to lunch with a friend," and the husband says, "Well, we you can't spend the money on lunch because we don't have the money." I see it's the same dynamic, but it's less pathological. It's more just on a human plane that he's trying to control her a little bit. So when I hear this, the Romeo effect and the love bombing, it's the outlier. It's the most pathological form of what happens at the beginning of most relationships, especially as women. We want to feel important, we want to feel valued. We want to feel like we're the glimmer in the other person's eyes, like we're desirable. And so that is normal. But with what you're describing, it's that outlier, it's pathological, it's used to abuse, and it's actually it just falls into the realm of exploitive and manipulative. And I think women in particular, I don't mean to be sexist, but I think women are wired to hold on to the love object.
I
Abused
agree.
women,
I
you know that,
agree.
right? That on average, a woman will try to leave an abusive relationship 9 times before she's successful because she keeps getting drawn back in. So think about these girls, these middle school, teenage girls. It's like they don't have a chance, don't stand a chance against all of this.
Yeah, you know what? That fact you just said, we know that victims of sex trafficking try to leave 8 to 10 times before they can get away, if they get away. It's almost the same kind of thing if you think about it. Now, I know you're sitting down, but make sure you're sitting down, Dr. Bethany, because this one I'm still thinking about, because this one's a new one on me recently, and you're going to break it down for us because I still don't have a complete handle on it. It's called the Drizzle.
Mm.
And this is directly from the streets here in New York. You know, we have our sources and women and girls we work with. And I'm like, the Drizzle. I usually
Mm.
hear about everything, know about everything. I'm like, well, what is this Drizzle? Like,
Mm.
girls as young as 12 are two different things. They're getting involved with, 19 and 20-year-olds, so older. And they'll like a guy in a flashy car, well dressed, he's got jewelry on, the whole package, right?
Mm.
And he'll say to the girl, you want, and I want to say girl, because to me, 12 and 13 is a girl when somebody's, 19, 20, 21 and older. So I'll say young
Mm.
girls. And he'll say, hey, you want to be with me? Well, you have to keep me in style.
Mm.
I got a Gucci belt on. You've got to get me these things.
Mm.
You'll be with me, but you got to provide.
Mm.
How are 12 and 13-year-olds going to provide? And he says, I have an idea. You'll do
Mm.
this, and it's sex trafficking. And the
Wow.
girls are doing it, Bethany. And this is what I'm so upset about. This mindset of where our, girls and young women are going, that they think this is all they're worth. They're not
Mm.
even doing, and this sounds terrible, so nobody should
Mhm.
misunderstand me. They're not even doing it to get themselves like money or goods or something. They're doing it for nothing, to give to somebody to maybe hang out in his car or whatever. And they're being used and abused. And I'm so upset, psychologically, what they're dealing with mentally. I mean, have you
Mhm.
heard about any of this? Because it's becoming quite a thing here in New York.
Well, I have, and what I'm hearing, similar to the love bombing, is that it's like a malignant exaggeration of the type of dysfunction that a lot of women get involved in. For instance, what I see in my practice is a woman, and I know I'm using kind of male female examples, so it could be same sex couples or whatever form it takes. But usually the female gendered partner will do everything to make the other person or the man's world okay. She will subjugate herself to make sure that the man doesn't get upset, doesn't get dysregulated, doesn't become angry. So if we think of this normal human tendency, and now it's just on steroids, these girls will do anything to keep the John happy or the pimp happy or whatever it is. I mean, they're taking a normal human tendency to want to please, and they're just, like I said earlier, they're injecting steroids into it. But it's really sad, so many of the stories you and I have covered on Nancy Grace, the victims are quite vulnerable, right? They come from families that are lower socioeconomic or impoverished, or the parents have to work a lot. Say they don't have that attachment system that's there to support them as often as they need. And these guys seek out these kinds of
Yeah.
girls because they can have power and control over them.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up, because another question I'm going in on 2025, very hard with a lot of our work. We talk a lot, Dr. Bethany, about the work we do at the Warriors, empowering the parents,
Mm.
empowering the children and teens.
Mm.
But nobody will talk about, there are so many vulnerable kids. The
Mm.
mother could be drug addled. The mother could have
Mm.
3 jobs, single parent household. A lot of these teens are left taking care of younger siblings, right? Like, we're not
Mm.
talking about those vulnerable kids, and there's a lot of them. And that's especially where these predators work their way in. They can see it a mile away. And those
Mm.
kids are being affected. I can't tell you the numbers. And nobody's really talking about that. We kind of talk about, oh, let's teach the kids digital safety. Let's teach the mothers. That's not working. If a kids come,
No.
so many kids, we talk about in America, 2,300, on average, 2,300 kids go missing every day. So do the
Mm.
math. That's a lot of kids. But that includes runaways. That includes,
Okay.
family disputes, things like that, one parent
Right.
against the other, sex traffic, labor trafficked. Um,
Mm,
but of that, people say, oh, runaways, runaways, because law enforcement says it a lot. Runaways. They have
mm,
to run away. They're in a very bad home environment. They're being abused, perhaps.
mm,
There's
mm,
nothing there. They actually think they're better going out on the street, finding some kind of job. They'll be better off than being abused at home. And that's where the predators also, within 24 hours, we know kids on the streets are getting picked up by these predators, right? And stuck in things.
mm,
So I'm
mm,
throwing a lot at you, but how do you think? Loaded question. We spend all our time at the Warriors really trying to get in there with our kids and our teens
mm.
and parents. How can we start to really break this other than, you know, one person at a time, like educating, helping, or doing? Because I am seeing this
Mhm,
increasing, and especially in just the last year. Talk about on
mhm,
steroids. How, as a
mhm,
society, these are our future adults, our future American leaders.
mhm,
Why aren't more people out in the streets screaming about it? And I actually mean out in the streets screaming about it. Our precious kids, our
mhm,
teens, our young people. What do you
mhm.
think off the top of your head? Can you think of, like, because I rack my brain all the time about all this, how to get at this, how to change the thinking?
Well, one thing comes to mind, and this is more political, but it's reducing the wealth gap. The wealth
Yes.
inequality between the wealthy and the poor, and that gap is getting wider and wider. So we have parents who are negligent and maybe depriving of their kids, but we also have parents who are just trying to put a meal on the
Yes.
table. And those kids are vulnerable too. There was a very important Catholic study that came out a number of years ago that showed that teenagers who have dinner with their parents every night, on average, earn more throughout the lifespan,
Mhm.
have reduced, you probably know this, teen pregnancy, drug abuse, they score higher on IQ tests, and they tend to have more advanced education. But it's really the conversations between
Yes.
them and the parents. It's the attachment. So imagine what you're talking about. The attachment then becomes like abusive, and some of the kids you're talking about. It's not just they don't have dinner. So I'm talking about maybe parents who don't have time to have dinner with their kids, or they're just trying to make a living. So that's one category, right? You see the more severe where they're being abused at home. So they go out into the streets and then they're abused even more. And it's just like the victimhood that they face in their homes primes them to be victims throughout the lifespan. I mean, one idea might be to educate people to spot the abuse, educators, police, people who are on the streets, so that, to say something, see something, say something, so it's pointed out a little bit more. What are you doing at Lynn's Warriors about this?
Well, we do a lot. We go into the schools, and we
Okay.
used to do high school, but we've lowered it to sixth, seventh, and eighth. There's a
Wow.
lot of red tape around schools, especially
Mm-hmm.
here in New York City, New York area.
Mm,
These are subjects they really don't want to talk about, to be honest with
mm,
you. A lot of the charter and private schools do want to talk about these things. So
mm,
that's a start. That's good. We do a lot of that. We do teen empowerment a group called the Wonder Girls. We just
mm.
did a teen safety summit. We had 300 girls ages 12 to 17
Wow.
because there's power in numbers. So we do a lot of that
Mm,
boots on the ground in the community. We did a teen
mm,
expo just a week and a half ago where we brought together people in all, a
mm,
dentist, doctors, teachers, lawyers,
mhm,
uh, a woman in college who started her own podcast, me, how to start your own nonprofit if you're passionate. And these are high
mm,
school girls. I
mm,
also work with the
mm.
DEA, Drug Enforcement Administration.
Okay.
Brought them in. Like, you can have these kind of careers and get benefits. Like the DEA, as an example. Um,
Mm,
there are lots of young women working in the DEA as
mm,
chemists. Behind the scenes, community outreach, and these
mm.
girls, their faces were like lighting up. Like, there is,
Wow.
because you know what, Bethany? It's not like, well, in my day, you could walk in a building, give a resume, get a job, work your way up the ladder kind of thing. That doesn't
Mhm.
happen anymore. Like,
No,
so the
no.
kids are all like, what do we do? Where are the
Mhm.
jobs? They can't even think that far ahead these days. Um,
Mm.
so we do that. We also go into places of worship. We just did Wednesday night. We,
Oh,
we do
wow.
interfaith. We do interfaith. It was an interfaith dinner to celebrate Easter and Passover.
Mm.
And we're all connected in New York. We're all women,
Okay.
Episcopal, Catholic, Jewish. And we
Mm.
did the Seder dinner
Mm-hmm.
to recognize, and we went through the whole story, how it relates to sex trafficking, which we call human slavery. I basically call it
Wow.
slavery. People are enslaved. Most of the people at the
Sure.
dinner, and we did it in a church. Our friend, the Reverend Adrian, hosted. She has a nice big
Mm.
church. And
Mm.
most of the people there, they weren't Jewish, but it was
Mm.
to relate, bringing us together,
Mm.
community, and to relate how Passover connects to trafficking, slavery, and
Mm.
also just to
Mm.
share our stories. And we had three survivors who stood up and read stories. And I always, Dr. Bethany, look at the audience. Like I take
Mm.
in the focal groups to see. You could hear a
Yeah.
pin drop, a pin drop. And a
Mm.
lot of people said, "Oh, I've never been to a Seder dinner before." I mean,
Well,
I'm not Jewish, but I've been to them. I'm in New York, so you know, you have friends and all
mhm.
that. But that was
Uh-huh.
like no, but it was like quite kind of educational. Like people, it was just a real feel good. We do a lot of things like that. Again, we do a lot of things with survivors behind the scenes, providing for their food, their transportation, their clothing, Dress for Success. We're opening a Lynn's
Wow.
Warriors chapter with Dress for Success. So we do. I can't even. We do so many things like community to help
Mm.
actually the people on the ground. We work with Goya Foods. So we go into the communities and bring
Mm.
pallets of beans. Well, Goya makes a lot of
Wow.
foods now. They have a lot of foods, not just beans. They make
Yeah.
a million things. And so I really try with the Warriors. We're building it out, you know, to build
Mm.
warriors type of, and we do a lot of legislative work,
Mm.
bipartisan to sign on to help with that end of it. That's the only way I can see any of this making a difference kind of thing.
How do you find the victims? I'm curious about that. Like, where do you spot them on the streets? Do they come up to you after you talk in a school? Like, what?
It's always through a network.
Okay.
It's never just somebody like on the street to be
Mhm.
to answer. Let's go back to something you said earlier.
Okay.
Something we definitely need with all of this is like a protocol everybody could follow, right?
A
Like protocols
protocol.
that, and as you know, it goes city by city or state by
Mhm.
state. There's nothing
Mhm.
federally, which is something, if everybody had a handbook, remember, people just want to be handed how to do something. They don't want to
Mhm.
really figure it out for themselves.
Mm.
But we have a protocol here in New York. For instance, the Brooklyn DA's office, excellent job. And that
Mm.
is on the street, finding people, brings
Mm.
them into a safe space.
Mm.
Medical's called in. Warriors can be called in for empowerment. You know,
Mm.
sometimes it's a hand on a shoulder. That's all it
Yes.
takes. Psychological's brought in. I call it a wheel with a lot of spokes. And the Brooklyn
Mm.
DA's office does it. It's a human trafficking division.
Oh.
So what, and it works. The Salvation
Mhm.
Army's part of it. They do wonderful work here in New York. They have a group called Pearl Essence. It's all trafficking, right?
And so what, how do they work? I mean, like, what do they, how do they identify the victims?
Brooklyn DA finds them.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. Brooklyn DA. It's either we know we get calls, somebody's on the street, somebody needs a safe house, somebody needs a safe space. We also sometimes we have people that just want to get away. There's like no judging for 2 or 3 days. They need
Mm.
safe space, and
Mm.
then they go back.
Mm.
But it's
Mm.
okay. Even though we
Mhm.
try, they know we're there to come back to. So all
Mm.
these different working parts succeed as a whole, but it's one of the rare protocols in place. So I'm not
Mm.
understanding why everybody doesn't have this protocol. I
Everybody
mean, I'm
should have
pushing it
it.
and advertising it to do it. Everybody's like, we don't have the man or woman power. We don't have the resources.
Mm.
It doesn't really take that much if different people would come together and not isolate.
Mm.
See, that's the
Mm.
other thing I thought people would automatically, on these issues we speak of, automatically want to jump on board and do whatever they could do in some capacity, right? And they
Mhm.
don't. And so I find
Mhm.
that another, they say they don't have the bandwidth, or they say they're overwhelmed, but you're working in trafficking. Like there has to be some
Mhm.
component of compassion there, right? Or something.
Yes.
So, I mean, the way we're doing it actually works. And I want to expand upon that. But it takes partners and community to do that with us.
Well, it sounds like you're developing a protocol that can be applied in many different settings. And I was thinking about what I was saying earlier about having dinner with your children, I mean, I think that came to mind because everything that attachment does
Mhm.
for young people, they're held in the context of a relationship. They're listened to. Adults processing their feelings. They're held accountable. They have limits. They have boundaries. They're safe. They're fed. They have good nutrition. And you're kind of expanding that out so that these sex trafficked young people and children actually are held by community. I mean, that's their dinner table, right? That they have adults in their life who see them, understand them, are providing services for them. And what you were talking about earlier about going into the schools and the Seder meal, I mean, I think it boils down to relationships at the end of the day. Don't you think that the young person, when the pimp or the sex trafficker is saying, buy me another Gucci belt, they think, oh, I know Lynn. Maybe I could give her a call. Or I know this person at the Salvation Army. Or I was at this one conference or this class and the teacher talked about that. I would think it would be that one person that is in their mind as somebody who cares would be the only voice that could override that of the sex trafficker. I mean, do you find that?
I find that, but and that is exactly what when somebody finally gets out of that, or we provide a safe space.
Mhm.
But on the other hand, a lot of these young people don't even realize what's going on. So they don't even
Oh, interesting.
realize like they're being exploited, they're being trafficked, they're being, and a lot of them, I have to tell you, they have smart mouths on them. They're like, I
Mhm.
know, but I'm doing it anyway. Like, blah, 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 blah. They don't want to hear different.
Mm.
But
They
eventually
don't
what
know
it's
they're being
doing,
abused.
they don't, they don't. And another
Hmm.
fact is we do know that upwards of like 98% of those in sex trafficking have been sexually abused as children. And it varies. It goes from like
98%?
there are different studies. It goes from like
Wow.
94 to 98
Wow.
have been as children sexually abused. So that also
Mhm.
tells us something. They're so vulnerable, right?
Mhm.
It leads them
Mhm.
to not have, self-empowerment or like themselves, even if they don't admit it, and they fall into this trap just trying to get away, or they think they're being loved. It's something that all of society has to think about, and work on in some capacity. And if nothing else, Dr. Bethany, as you pointed out, I mean, talk to your kids at home or grandkids, develop relationship,
Mhm.
because the one thing they tell me a lot is my parents don't listen to me. They're on the computers, or
Mhm.
you know, really, they just don't want to be bothered. They just tell me go,
Mhm.
on my computer. And that's a tough thing to get around. There's parental autonomy. I can't tell parents.
No.
We suggest, and one of our things we do suggest is, dinner or breakfast at a table, or when you're in the car,
Mhm.
talk to your kids
Mhm.
in the car, not too
Don't
deep,
just get on your cell phone,
as
right?
long as it doesn't get, too heated and somebody jumps out of the car when it's moving, kind
Mm.
of thing. But anywhere you can, how was your day? Oh,
Mm.
oh, you're playing that game. Oh, tell me about that
Mm.
game because I'm not
Mm.
familiar with it. Like any way you can engage them is what we tell them. I want to finish up with something with you
Yes.
is, and I have to ask you, there is a lot of hope despite what we're talking about. We're talking, you and me. So I think this is very
Yes.
hopeful. We're opening up these issues for the warriors, for the public to
Mhm.
hear about, to know there are solutions.
Mhm.
You certainly have a practice. You can help people. I'll put everything in the body of the video so people have all
Okay.
your information, contact, and all your platforms. The warriors are here for people in New York.
Mm.
Um, I am very bothered by this new bro culture, this
Mm.
incel culture. Do you want to weigh in at all about that?
Well, the bro culture, it seems to have started as men bonding. That's
Yes.
the idea. A little bit like, have you heard of Promise Keepers?
Yes.
Groups of Christian men who gather in these large stadiums and they are taught to be good husbands, but often the bro culture masquerades as it's covering up something deeper, which is aggression towards women. So even in Promise Keepers, these men are maybe taught to be good husbands, but they're also taught that they're the head of the household and they have power over the woman, and that the woman should, you know, um, follow their instruction. So the bro culture, I think, is like the toxic masculinity. I know that's a word that is being used a lot right now, where men are relating to their love objects on the basis of power rather than affection. And there's some interesting research about sex offenders and men who are sexually aggressive, which is that um, sex and aggression are processed through the same regions of the brain for boys. So their mothers socializing them, teaching them that not all relationships are sexual and how to be kind and how to be loving, that socialization plays a very important role. What we have now is the Tate brothers socializing men, right? Or all these creepy men who are lifting weights, sex trafficking, saying it's kind of how Howard Stern used to be. I hate to say it, but um, there were a lot of ideas being floated about even on his show about women as sexual objects. I don't know. Those are just some ideas that come to mind about this.
Um, okay, so here's what's going on, which is why we're so disturbed at the Warriors. And again, I'm seeing such escalation in just the last year,
Mm,
which is for it to speed up like this is what is so bothersome. So we do, for instance, have the Tate brothers, these
mm,
criminal brothers, dual citizenship with the UK, United States. We work with victims
mm.
now of the Tate brothers online school.
Wow. Wow.
Lots of guys were signing up. That's another program, but all these boxes, check here if you're 18.
Mhm.
12, 13, 14-year-old boys are checking off I'm 18 and they're given access to
Mm.
the site. So the Tate brothers basically had their own school online of,
Wow.
how to get it over on a woman, how you treat a woman, what you do to a woman. You never take no for an answer. That seems to be a new one I'm hearing all the time. You never take no for an answer.
Mm.
So when I believe this toxic, and I'm using the word, I've never used it so much except lately.
Mhm.
I'm very concerned because even the word incel used to have a different kind of like sexual meaning, but
Yes.
now incel has become this toxic. We hate
Mhm.
women, we hate girls, we're out to destroy them, we don't believe them, we don't like them.
Mhm.
And so you see these Tate brothers, and all people can
Mm.
see the same thing. We've talked about it, with P Diddy, as I call him, Dirty Diddy, and all these
Yes.
other ones. The power, the money, people are so attracted to that.
Mm.
Look at
Mm.
what's happening on the flip side. But I'm very concerned about this bro culture slash incel, where the young boys, and we're talking going back to 11, 12, 13, are getting involved and
Mm.
taking it out on girls, kind of thing. So that's something
Mm.
that really has to be dealt with. And I have to say, destroyed. How are we
I
going to
think
do that?
it
I
becomes
don't know.
cultural, right? I mean, this is what we've seen in Afghanistan. We've seen it in Iran, that it is culturally supported to suppress women, to be aggressive towards them. That if a woman like Misha doesn't wear a hijab, it's okay for the police to arrest her and beat her to death. I mean, that's where this all leads, to be honest with you, where there is a pylon effect where all men feel that this is appropriate. And it is not appropriate. I do think many men are vulnerable to feeling that they are more important if they are directing hatred towards a woman. And I think at the core of it is the belief that if the woman is autonomous, is independent, not under the man's thumb, that she will get away, that she will reject him. So they're using power and aggression to quell the woman's autonomy so that they can just feel constantly reassured. It's like these men are stuck in a state of rejection. So they reel the women in. I'm thinking in particular, I had a patient many years ago who felt that he couldn't find a girlfriend. And he was a film financier. He lived in the Hollywood Hills. He was so wealthy. He was nice looking. Felt he couldn't find a woman. So he joined this group of men who practiced picking up women. And they did this catch and release thing where they would all hang out at a mall or a restaurant. They would approach women. They would quickly get the woman sort of under their control, get their number. And once they'd done that, then they would let the woman go. They were cheering each other on to get women's numbers. And it looked on the surface, the guy that led this group was like teaching men how to be men and, how to find a date, how to get married, but it wasn't that. It was a cover for aggression towards women. They would laugh at these women. They would devalue these women. They would get their numbers. What God knows what they did with the numbers. So, the toxic masculinity, it always masquerades as something helpful. Like, I'm going to teach you kids how to get more money and how to lift weights and how to have sports cars and all of that. But that's not what it's about. It's really about hatred at the end of the day.
Shocking. And no wonder that guy couldn't get dates when he was acting like, because you think you want a phone number, you want to call the person and go on a date. But like you said, who knows what they did with the phone numbers? But that seems a little counterproductive to me if you're trying to find a date and go out with a
It was
woman.
counterproductive. It was
But
frightening.
I don't know what goes on in those minds. Let's finish up. Do you have some final words? I threw a lot at you. We have a lot to cover. I always trust what you have to say about everything. I do also want to point out that we at the Warriors work with a lot of great men,
Mm,
that really we something else we're working on is getting the boys more involved with men like mentors. So we've
mm,
started doing that. And
mm,
we have a lot of, especially like pastors and rabbis that want to do this type of thing, because
mm.
I feel like boys in all of this are really the forgotten ones. And
Yes.
boys in the United States, fastest growing demo for human trafficking last year, boys, and nobody's talking
Wow.
about boys,
Wow.
right? So
And are
we
they
have to really,
trafficked by other men primarily?
listen. Here's the how it's working these days. We have so many women involved in this trafficking, but the
Mm.
woman always works under, there's some man on top of her who
Okay.
directs her, because she's the mother or the sister, the missing, like the Ghislaine Maxwell type. Let's break it down a
Yes.
little bit. She's the
Yes.
one, I'm going to take you shopping for a nice dress or shoes or get your hair done. But we have
Mhm.
also, I don't know if you've noticed, Dr. Bethany, a lot of aggression. I have to ask you about this one. It just occurred to me. I'm constantly, almost on a daily basis, seeing these stories of school teachers, female school
Mm.
teachers, getting involved with their students.
I've seen a lot of it too.
And I feel like it's every day almost I'm seeing, and a lot of them are usually married or have a boyfriend.
Yes.
And actually, they're all different ages. I've seen they're in their 20s, 30s. I've even seen 50s
Mm,
getting
mm,
involved with 13, 14, 15, 16, 17-year olds.
mm,
I don't know what that's about. I don't. So I'm seeing a lot of everybody in this field doing a lot of things. But as far as getting back to boys being trafficked, it's
mm,
big business. People are always like, why is this all happening? This right
mm,
now is an attack directly on boys. That is the demand. So that
mm,
goes into the sextortion, that goes into this bro culture, right?
mm.
Grabbing them, making them feel they don't
Yeah.
know they're maybe getting trafficked. It's very complex. I mean, there's a
Mm.
lot going on.
You see a lot.
Well,
I
what?
think my final thought when you were asking is that don't think it can't happen to you or your kids
Yes.
or your neighbor or somebody because it's happening all around you. And don't think it's not happening in your own life in some way. I mean, you're seeing the outliers, you're seeing the most extreme cases, but everything you mentioned today, I'm like, oh yeah, I see that in the couples I treat. I see this in the girls who are dating or the boys who are looking for affection. It's just not on such an extreme level. It's on a more benign dysfunctional level. So we're all a part of this big system. Really. Everybody, all of us in our lives are either perpetrators or victims in some area. Okay. None of us are immune. It doesn't go to that level that you're seeing, but your listeners and viewers should learn about their own lives from this too. Is there somebody in their life that they're giving everything over in an inappropriate way just to make that other person happy? Are they gaining control over somebody to make a man happy? Are they controlling somebody else? I mean, how do these patterns play out in less visible ways as well as the more remarkable ways you're talking about?
Yeah, let me ask you something. What do you think? Because I'm always just, you must call 911 no matter what. We have to always have a paper trail, the way
Mm,
with any of these sexual crimes or things, because the courts and all that, but that's another program. If
mhm,
say a woman's listening right now, she says, that sounds like me. I don't
mhm.
know. I don't, he took away the charge card and I have to ask if I can eat the meal. Maybe what should they do? I mean, there are resources. I'll put some in the body of the video,
I
but
think access resources. That's the first thing you have to do. I mean, obviously, when you making sure you have all important documents. So if you have to leave a household right away, you have them with you. Women don't leave because they're afraid that their own children will be vulnerable. They won't be able to support the children, that they won't have enough money to live on their own. So accessing resources, even if it's calling the National Domestic Abuse Hotline, you can go to an ER, you can go to a police station, you can go to a hospital, and you can turn yourself in and you can say that you're in trouble. The paper trail is very useful, I think, to call, when you go into the bathroom stalls at airports and they say, are you being sex trafficked? And there's a number, always make sure you have a cell phone on you so that you can get help if you need it. I mean, what would you suggest?
well, I suggest because these are split seconds things people have, remember the
Mhm.
minds, I don't have to tell you, the minds are usually like very damaged for people,
Yes.
whether it's trafficking or whether that's why if you go in the bathrooms, actually it's one of our programs, that became law about 2 years ago now.
Mm.
Every train station, bus station, airport has to post those.
Hmm.
Okay. So anywhere I go, I'm always looking and taking pictures of if it's there, bathrooms
Hmm.
across America. They don't realize though, Dr. Bethany, they're even,
That
we have them
that's
in Spanish. We do them in English and Spanish, all these signs now. They don't
Mhm.
realize, or, their perpetrator, the predator, or even if it's the husband or boyfriend, they keep their cell phones. They don't even have a cell phone on them.
Mm.
So I,
Mm.
I, I want people to really, that's a tough one because people are
Do they
afraid they're
even
going
know
to get,
they're being sex trafficked?
they
Some of
don't,
them.
but here's the thing. I want the public to be aware because usually if something doesn't look right or sound right, right? Just
Mhm.
report something. Whether you're in an airport, you go up to the desk, right? One of the
Mhm.
counters, go into one of the stores and tell the clerks,
Mhm.
just do it. Because I can't tell you how many people have said to me, I saw something 10 years ago. I saw something 20 years ago. I
Mhm.
know it was, I just didn't open my mouth. If you're wrong, you're wrong. Pass it on to somebody in authority if possible, kind of thing. And I do want people
Mhm.
to know, despite all the talk about resources and this and that, there actually are, like you pointed out, an emergency room, the best place to go.
Mhm.
Open 24 hours. Get yourself to an emergency room. That is something we
Mhm.
tell all the time. Go to
Mhm.
an emergency room. They will know from there pretty much what to do. It's about understanding
Mhm.
you can do that, right? Because law
Mhm.
enforcement
Yes.
scares people. They're usually told you're going to get in trouble, you're going to get
Yeah.
arrested, we don't want to go. So we tell them emergency rooms right away. Get
Mhm.
into that hospital
Mhm.
setting. But it's very, look, we've opened up a can of worms. There's a lot going on here. But the bottom line is we just passed in Congress. Well, it'll pass this week. Needs one more vote. It's called the Take It Down Act, which will be,
Mhm.
be the first piece of legislation since 1998 for any
Oh.
of this internet, what's going on. And it simply is a direct for deep fake, and the porn and all
Oh.
that. We're very proud of this one. So bipartisan, everything is we work on in Washington.
Mhm.
And what it will say is if this platform, for instance, X, you're notified there's a nude image, that's not me, or I want that image down. They have 48 hours. And if that platform doesn't take it down, they are held criminally responsible. And
Wow.
also, you can go after the person who put it up there if you can get that far to find out where it came from. First piece since 1998. So we're very
That's
happy about that. We
amazing.
have a lot of legislation again. So there are a lot of hopeful things happening, but it starts with talking about it, right? Being
Mhm.
real about it, talking to your kids about it, and not being embarrassed,
No,
right?
it is a
Because this
thing.
is, they're seeing it on their phones and stuff anyway. So why don't we and you out there be the leaders? Age appropriate. Let's like just talk about these issues. And that's what I have to say.
Mhm.
It really starts with something you touched upon before. You got to just talk about it. That's
Demystify it. This is just a minor point, but my parents were missionaries, and then my father became a pastor of a Baptist church in Bakersfield, California. And what I saw in religious settings was not so much what we saw in the Catholic Church, abusing young people sexually, but I saw youth group leaders dominating kids emotionally. where they took over the child's life emotionally. And in my field, we call that interpersonal offending. It's not the same as a sexual offense. They may never have sex with the child, but they interpersonally offend, which they use the child for emotional gratification. So, as I was saying earlier, don't think it can't happen to you or it's not happening all around you, because it happens on milder and more severe levels. And I wanted to ask you, you know how the ACLU has an app you can put on your phone where if you see police brutality or you see a crime, you take a picture of it and it uploads to a site immediately. I don't know if you know that. And so it's instant documentation. Does Lynn's Warriors have anything like that? It just seems like it might be helpful for people who are
No,
seeing
but I
something.
think we should have some something like that because how should I say this? As part of our coalition here in New York, like
Mhm.
we are one piece of it, right? Because I'm not law enforcement.
Right.
They do have a piece like that
Hmm.
go to them. I'm not explaining this really the right way. And then we all take our steps to get that person safe. But I know
Oh,
you're
I
talking,
see.
what you're talking about is a little bit different. It's almost like we have something here called, what is it called? Crime Stoppers or something where people can take pictures and post things.
Mm,
Mm,
mm.
that's a little different from what you're talking about as well. Um, yes,
Maybe it
we
can be
should
our next
develop. My mind was
discussion.
going
You
crazy, even though like
develop.
I'm talking to no, but it's like a warriors app where you can. But I'll tell you the problem. Again, another program. You open up a lot of things here, Dr. Bethany.
Privacy issues.
No, no, it's not that. It's here in New York. I'll use an example because I know a lot
Mhm.
about New York. Really, the laws are written for the most part for the criminal. This is not good.
Mm.
This is not good these days. Or there
Yeah.
are laws on the books about trafficking. They're not enforced,
Mm.
right? So
Yeah.
we're working to change that kind of whole justice system. That's a big one of what's going on because most of these victims of any I digress a little bit here, but if it's rape, if it's sexual exploitation, if it's trafficking, they're afraid of law enforcement or the judges don't treat them kindly. They treat them
Mhm.
like, why did you dress that? They're still saying this. Why did you dress that way? Why were you out on the street? They don't look to the background to seeing what's really in that vulnerable person's, history or why they were
Mhm.
with that person. So a lot don't want to even come forward, don't want to get involved.
Mhm.
And there's also a lot are so scared, for instance, to get involved with lawyers who just think,
Mm.
it's a money grab. They feel very
Yes,
isolated.
of
And then there's
course.
that overall thing of society not wanting to get involved. I'm trying to crack that one, but it's, that's a tough one. Just
Well,
don't,
another
don't,
thing then for
don't
a
look.
future show, my husband's a judge, and he gave me an article that was quite interesting that had to do that with male judges who have daughters, that because of the influence of the daughters, their rulings tend to be less gender biased. In other words, they're more
Believe it.
favorable towards victims and women's issues. I just thought that was fascinating. That was
Oh, I
one
love
one
that.
little intervention, one little glimmer of hope in what can be a very dark system.
Oh, it reminds me because I was a lawyer wanted to do an interview with me a couple of years ago and just brutally attacked me, which is
Mm.
fine because I can attack back. It's like, and even
We do our
better.
Lynn's Warriors.
Exactly. But he just didn't. I was talking about New York State. They want to legalize prostitution, but what nobody talks about, they want to legalize brothels in New York State, sex trafficking,
Mm,
sex buying, pimps and traffickers. That's what this really means. It's not just
mm.
legalizing and everything we do at the Warriors. Look, we're concerned about children in particular, right?
Yes.
Minors, okay? This guy, the nicest man in the world, but once we got on air, he's like attacking me. It's okay. I attack back. But his
Mm.
daughter also works in his law firm with him. So he called me back and said, "My daughter made me I have to apologize for you and I'm very sorry and I was
Wow.
disrespectful." And she said that was disgusting and it was incredible. I fought him, I fought him and he said, "I didn't understand, Lynn, what you talk about from the perspective of a victim." And this is
A
a very
victim.
well seasoned older lawyer who's really been around. And so I thought,
Mhm.
that's interesting. And I hear from a lot of judges. It's just, sorry, Bethany, you're married to one, but here in New York, they'll be like,
I know.
I just, get them in, get them out. And I don't want to know about what's going on behind the scenes. Can't
No,
have
it's
that.
it's true. As you and I know, there's no such thing as a perfect victim, right? Victims are targeted because they're often at the fringe of society, or they've been
Yes.
abused in their homes, and all the things you and I have been talking about today. So they get re-victimized by the judicial system and
Yeah.
by everybody around them. And I think that's something too for the audience or your listeners to think about. Are they re-victimizing victims in their own life? Don't think any of us are immune from this. It's not all out there. It's all around us.
It's so multi-layered. And I always think, Dr. Bethany, I'm like, I'm going to stick to love bombing today and Romeo Effect. But I just go off. I can't help myself. There's a lot to talk about. And I feel
It's a
so blessed
lot.
to have you that I gotta grab you and ask you things, and get your advice and get your opinion and share your expertise with our warriors. But it's just incredible. I mean, promise me you'll come back, because
I
I
would love
love
to.
breaking down these issues. And again, I want especially our girls and women to look at you, Dr. Bethany, and to understand these things happen, right?
They
But
do.
there's a lot of hope, and there's also resources. So I will
Hmm.
list all of your information in the body of the video. You are terrific, author of Deal Breakers, everybody, when to work on a relationship and when to walk. I like that
And Lynn,
title.
you do such amazing work. So
Oh,
I'm always blown away when I
well,
listen to you.
you
So
are a warrior, Dr. Bethany
I'm a
Marshall.
warrior too now. I'm an
You no,
honorary one.
absolutely. Our warriors are growing, and
Mhm.
we need to be the leaders, Dr.
Mm.
Bethany, and let
Yeah.
women and girls and boys and men too know we care about them.
Mm.
There are resources, and
Mm.
we're going to help out in any capacity we can help out, or we will certainly at the warriors direct people to a lot of resources across the country where they are through our networks.
Mm.
And it's just terrific. And I want to thank you for the all
Thank
of the
you.
work you do. I know none of this is easy, but you do it with such ease, because I usually am
So do
yelling at
you.
people. Yelling nicely, not yelling, just yelling, like, because I'm so passionate, I get worked up
You're
about things.
passionate.
But yes, very much so. That kind of yelling, the passion yelling. But you know what? DrBethanyMarshall.com is the website. And I'm going to say it again. We have such a youth mental health crisis. I
Mhm.
want kids out there and I'm actually going to be playing this for our Wonder Girls, which are middle and high school girls,
Mhm.
because I want them to see you and hear you. Okay. I'm doing
Wonderful.
an event next week with them. I
Right.
want them to know there are women out there that care about them
Mm.
and will talk to them, kind of thing. So you're going to be a Wonder Girl too. And guess what their color is? Pink, the same
Pink.
pink you're wearing. And I usually wear blue because that's the color of human trafficking. So I'm like always in blue,
Oh,
kind of.
wow. I did not
Yes,
know that.
blue heart, or we as society feel blue because of the horror of the trafficking. Blue's the color of human
I
trafficking.
love that. That's symbolism.
Yes, that's what
Yeah.
it is. And you're being the Wonder Girl because you're wearing the pink. So,
I'm the Wonder Girl.
well, I want to thank you so much. I'll have
Thanks,
all your
Lynn.
information in the body of the video. And until we speak again, Dr. Bethany Marshall, thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Dr. Bethany. Bye bye.